You're listening to the Journey Podcast. How can you find hope and recovery from the complex challenges of anxiety and substance abuse? In this episode, our guest shares her personal journey of recovery and sobriety. This episode contains adult subject matter, and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this transformative episode, we embark on a journey of healing, recovery, and rediscovery of self. Join us as we delve into the deeply personal and courageous story of our guest, who triumphed over the formidable challenges of anxiety and substance abuse. Through her remarkable journey to sobriety and well-being, we gain profound insights into the power of resilience, self-compassion, and the invaluable support of health and sober coaching. Tiffany Hopkins is a health and sober coach, helping women who want to change their relationship with alcohol. Her background as a social worker has propelled her in the field of holistic care. She has helped many transform their lives by relating to her clients both personally and professionally. With over 3 years of sobriety, Tiffany can help her clients achieve the goals that they have set for themselves and help them live their best life. Let's meet Tiffany Hopkins. Hi, Tiffany. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because healing from anxiety and substance abuse is such a powerful topic for today's conversation. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here and meeting you today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this because, as we've been just discussing before this episode also, it's such an important topic, especially with the amount of stress that's going on in the world. So I'm very glad you're here to talk about that. Now, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your own story so that our listeners can get to know you a little bit before we dive in?
Yes, thank you. I have to be honest, I always struggle a little bit with this question because it's like, where do I even start? Because part of what I do when I help clients is I help them kind of put the puzzle pieces together. I think it helps people to understand and realize that sometimes this isn't our fault. There's so much shame and guilt that we carry around for some of the choices that we made. Where did my puzzle begin? I could probably narrow it all the way down to my childhood, but to kind of sum it up, I think I was just a normal kiddo girl who struggled with self-esteem and trying to fit in and wanting people to accept me. And I think because of that, it led me down kind of a path to drinking and things like that early. So my first drink was grade, and I remember drinking heavily and getting drunk in junior high. And of course, that led to high school. And then during my high school graduation, I had my very first panic attack, and I had no clue what it was. People were trying to diagnose me, like, maybe you have low blood sugar, maybe you had this and that, and ended up going to several doctors, getting several tests. Obviously, they couldn't find anything wrong. And during that time period, I had started my undergraduate degree, and I was taking Psychology 101, read about anxiety and panic attacks in this huge book, because we had books back then, right? And I took it to the neurologist and I said, this is what I have. This describes exactly what I'm going through. And he said, you're right. We didn't find anything wrong. So yes, you have anxiety. And of course, the next step was a psychologist, and the psychologist or psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist wanted to give me medicine. Well, I was 18, and thought I knew everything. I didn't need medication. Now that I know what I have, I can handle it. I can do it on my own. And unfortunately, I didn't have the wisdom or maturity that I thought I had. And that led me down a path of using alcohol to numb out, should I say, or cope with my anxiety. I remember anytime I would be going to a social event, I would drink alcohol because it would lower my anxiety. And what I didn't know then was that alcohol only does that temporarily. Long story short, after my undergraduate degree, the alcohol then also led to other substances. And next thing you know, I was in this kind of pit, as I call it, through many years of counseling, going to church, diving into my faith. I came out of that pit, but it was a slow process. I tell my clients this wasn't like a light switch I flipped on and suddenly I was sober and clean and helping other people. This was a process of many years of seeds being planted, of talking to different therapists, trying different support groups, reading many, many books about addiction and anxiety and panic. I just kind of described my 20s as a blur, but it was also the time that I was healing. And in my 20s, I really took the steps to kind of educate myself. I ended up going to grad school, getting a master's in social work. And so I'm a licensed independent social worker. I help women who struggle with anxiety and depression and alcohol use disorder. Over the past few years, I also received my health coach certification and nutrition certificate. And I'm able to help women now with my sober coaching business reclaim their lives and reclaim their mind-body connection.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story. And there are so many things in there that we can unpack and start to talk about. But what a journey you've had and finding your way forward from that and beginning the healing and taking that path. So, wow, thank you so much for sharing. Now, one thing that you touched on was the fact that you wanted to numb things with the alcohol. And I have a feeling that many people do come to alcohol as something that helps them cope, be that with negative emotions, traumatic experiences they've had, stress, or anything that's going on in their lives. So how do you work with women who come to you as a sober coach and have all these things going on, and they're using alcohol as a coping mechanism? Where do you start with finding something healthier that they can cope with instead of alcohol?
Yeah, well, when people come to me, I never actually encourage them to quit right now because that can have a lot of physical health issues and cause a lot of physical health issues, including death. The first thing we do is kind of do a check-in to see where they are. How much are you drinking? I always have them sign like an acknowledgement form saying, it's best that you consult with a physician. We need a physician involved to kind of make sure that you're not going to have severe withdrawal symptoms, things like that. So that's kind of the very first thing we do. Once we're cleared physically, then we start to put those puzzle pieces together. And if they choose to quit drinking right then and there, that's great. I meet them where they are. Some people know that they want to quit, but they're not sure how. And also imagining a life without alcohol, sometimes people can't envision that. They don't know what that looks like. I like to say I come alongside of my clients. And at times, what you'll find is they'll say, I just really want to decrease my drinking. And I'll say, great, let's decrease your drinking. Because again, a life without alcohol is great. And they can't envision that. So we work together. I meet them where they are. We talk about goals. Is your goal to moderate? Is your goal to decrease your use? Or is your goal complete sobriety? And we go from there. My main focus in the beginning is education. You have to understand how you ended up where you ended up. And again, I want to take that shame away, that guilt away, the things that we all carry with us. A lot of people, their personality changes. They do and say things that they would never do sober when they're using alcohol. We also have to educate how alcohol affects our bodies, our brains. We have to take away the shame and the guilt. And then we work to put the puzzle pieces together. How did I end up here? You kind of mentioned a few things. Trauma could be a reason, mental illness, having it role modeled in your family. society, the role that society plays in normalizing alcohol. That's kind of where we start. And then again, depending on the goal, we kind of go from there. We really dig deep into why do you want to quit drinking? Before we ever actually tackle the replacing the alcohol with good habits, healthy habits, and exercise, meditation, and food, that is honestly the last thing we do because I think you have to have a really strong foundation and understanding of why am I doing something that I don't want to be doing, but I'm doing it anyway? Or why am I doing something that I know is not good for me, but I'm doing it anyway? So we have to really work at conquering these misconceptions we have about alcohol. And I think only then can we start replacing the alcohol use.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And to kind of start with some of the more foundational pieces that come into our lives, we talked before that alcohol obviously is legal and it's kind of looked at as this thing that's okay to use as a coping mechanism because there's nothing illegal about it. It can be hard to explain to your friends and family all of a sudden if you don't want to drink anymore, especially if you have people around you that are still using alcohol or do like to drink. There's a physical dependence part to the alcohol, but there's also this mental, emotional, and social part to it that can be very, very difficult. So do you support your clients through that as well and teach them how they can kind of set boundaries and find more self-confidence and deal with those kind of things?
Absolutely. First of all, I offer a weekly support group. So my clients have access to a community, to socialization. I give them an opportunity to connect with other like-minded women. But to answer your question, yes, that's also one of the things we talk about in the beginning. I call it putting on our armor. We have to be prepared. And being prepared when we're changing our relationship with alcohol is one of the very first things we have to do and we have to be on the lookout for. I talk about wearing this armor. And in the beginning, your armor is going to be really, really heavy because, like you said, when we go out into the world, we get looked at differently. Heads start to tilt and they start to say, why are you not drinking anymore? Because again, some people cannot fathom a life without alcohol. And so we begin to feel judged and we begin to feel like we're different. And that oftentimes will lead us back to alcohol. I talk about being prepared. And some of the ways that you can do that is having a response ready. So when someone says, why are you not drinking? Because they will. What is it about alcohol? Why are you not doing what everybody else is doing? So we have to have a response ready. And that could be for health reasons. It could be that some choosing a healthier lifestyle, or I talk with my clients about what that verbiage may sound like, because I do think sometimes it's individualized. I don't know if this is right or not, but I even encourage my people to say, if you have to fib a little bit in the beginning, you can say, oh, I have to get up in the morning because I have something to do or whatever. Anything to get you through those first few weeks to make you more comfortable in what you're saying. Then we talk about maybe driving yourself to events so that you can leave early if you're feeling uncomfortable. There's many, many non-alcoholic beverages out there these days, craft beers and all of these things that are NA drinks. Always opting for that if you feel the need to. Sometimes it's just about having a glass in your hand. So maybe going to an event or sitting at home watching TV, maybe you're used to having a wine glass in your hand. Well, maybe putting your favorite new non-alcoholic beverage in your glass. There's little tricks to the trade, if you will, or tips that we can talk about, and that over time, like I said, it becomes easier and your armor becomes less heavy. But I really don't think we ever take it off because things come up. Trauma happens, grief happens, stressful days happen, and we're always kind of on guard. Even myself, I'm almost 4 years sober, and at times I still have to explain myself. I still have to carry my armor, but it's not as heavy as it was in the beginning. But over time, you get used to it. You almost become empowered by your sobriety. And I talk with my clients about this is your superpower. This makes you different. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I feel like there already is so much guilt and shame attached to overusing alcohol, that having to justify why you're deciding not to use it. It seems very ridiculous because it seems like that's a positive step towards your healing. And to really have to justify that to other people, it seems like a lot that you also have to worry about on top of everything else that's going on. So, especially when it comes to friends and family.
Right. We have to keep in mind that alcohol is a drug and
Yeah.
people don't want to look at it like a drug. I've read in several books, what if you told a friend that you quit using cocaine? The friend would say, "Oh, that's great. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you." But unfortunately, when we tell someone we quit using alcohol, the first question is why? And so then, yes, we're stuck to having to explain ourselves. Really doesn't make sense if you know about alcohol and the damage it does to your body. I mean, we put it in our gas tanks. Nobody makes that connection. It's ethanol. It's exactly what is in our gas we put in our car, and we're putting that in our bodies. And I think circling back around, education is really fundamental when you're trying to change your relationship with alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could imagine that some of your clients might face difficult times when they decide to become sober and they look back at some of the damage that using alcohol for whatever amount of time may have caused in their relationships or in their families. So, how can people support themselves through these feelings of maybe more depression or anxiety as they're kind of saying, wow, I really was a person that I didn't want to be. And now I have to face up to what happened during that time. How do you work with that? That seems like very heavy and a lot of emotional things to work through.
It is. It really, really is. I always remind my clients that the best gift you can give your family and friends is to no longer drink. As long as you're waking up every day and saying, today, I'm going to choose not to drink, because we can't focus too far in the future. That kind of trips us up sometimes. If we're kind of waking up every day and choosing not to drink, then those relationships can be healed and we can ask for forgiveness and we can be forgiven all the time. But as long as we're continuing the behavior that got us in trouble in the first place, then unfortunately, those relationships are really going to struggle to heal. So I guess what I'm saying is we have to use our sobriety to heal our relationships and to kind of move forward for that. As long as we're not drinking, we have nothing to worry about. And that's the freedom that you find in sobriety. As long as you're not drinking, then you don't have to worry about who I yelled at or who I hurt or whatever. If we're not drinking, then all of that goes away. And that's powerful. And that's what our friends and family want to see. They want to see the behavior change. So we can apologize, we can say all the things, but until we change that behavior, probably not much is going to change in our relationships. And so that's kind of where I work with them. Just getting the drinking under control is the first step. Healing everything, your body, your mind, your emotions, relationships, the shame, the guilt, all of the things. We're all human. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. Ours just happens to be maybe around alcohol use. Making sure that people know that as well, that they aren't different than anyone else. Everybody has a struggle. Yours is just correlated with alcohol use.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have things we deal with on different kind of levels. So in your own journey, what did you find was the most difficult part for you on your sober journey? And is that the same for everyone, or does everybody have sort of a different most difficult part?
I think that's a great question. Yeah, you hear about this rock bottom, and some people have that a devastating story about their quote unquote rock bottom. I mentioned I felt like I was in this deep pit where I couldn't get out, and literally I had to crawl my way out of that. But yeah, everybody's story is different. The most difficult thing for me actually was when I decided to start changing and not as much. I had to really change where I hung out or like where I went. I had to change the people that I hung out with. people that I considered almost like family because I had spent so much time with them. And something we probably don't have time for today, but community and connection is a huge reason why people drink alcohol. Now, looking back at my journey, I can tell that I was starving for that community connection. And I found that, unfortunately, by hanging out at the bars and forming this community of friends. But really, our foundation, what our friendship was based on, was alcohol. We never did anything unless we were together. When I started changing my relationship with alcohol, I literally had someone say to me, "You don't do anything anymore." And that was really hurtful because they weren't supporting me in my journey. They weren't saying, "Great for you. Why don't we go grab some coffee?" I never was asked that. I was put back in a place of isolation, of loneliness, of disconnection, of feeling, which is kind of all the reasons why I ended up drinking to begin with. That was really hard. And that's when I started exploring support groups and things like that, because it's really important that you're around people that get it, that understand. And so I provide that weekly support group because you have to have an outlet, you have to have a community. But for other people, the hardest part for them might be something different. But I would say that the majority of people in the beginning definitely feel a little isolated unless they have a really strong support system. And then maybe the most difficult for them might be something else.
Hmm. I love the fact that you offer the community aspect when you support women in this, because as you said, I think the chances of staying sober are also much higher if you're part of a community that supports you and really gets what you're going through. So that sounds really wonderful. Now, we've talked a lot about people who are addicted to alcohol, but what about their friends and family who are trying to support them? They may not have had those same experiences, right? They may not know anything about what it's like to try and start the sober journey. So can you tell them anything of how they could best support their loved ones if they see them struggling with alcohol or they know they might want to start the sober journey? Anything that we can do right and something that maybe we shouldn't do, something that we could do wrong when we're trying to support someone on their sober journey?
Yeah. One of the best ways to support someone going through changing their relationship with alcohol is to include them. We want to still be included. We haven't changed necessarily who we are. We're still the same person. We still want to have fun. So many people think that not drinking is boring. And I'm telling you, I've had more belly laughs since being sober than I think I ever have when I was drinking. But yeah, we want to be included. We want to be invited to the party. We want to be invited to dinner. We want to all of the things that we were doing before. We want for an event or a social event, we want to be offered water or pop or a non-alcoholic beverage. When someone's going around and saying, "Do you need a drink?" Sometimes they skip over the sober person because a drink means alcohol drink. We want to be included. So I think just not forgetting about us, asking if we want to go see a movie, asking if we want to go have coffee. There are so many things to do sober. And I think that that's one of the downfalls of alcohol use is we get used to just doing things that include alcohol. And we forget that there's a million other things to do. I think that's just vitally important. The thing that I would say don't do is don't forget to ask us how we're doing. If that makes sense. We want to talk about it. And maybe I'm alone in that. But if I'm going through something and I've friends to ask me about it, I want them to be like, "How are you doing? How can I support you? How many days has it been?" That's amazing. I think sometimes reason we want to kind of tiptoe around the subject. And that makes us feel more isolated, I think. That's something that you shouldn't do is ignore the subject or not ask us about it because we might go into a horrible relapse or binge or something like, and that's true. The thing that'll make us drink again is again the feeling of isolation and loneliness and asking about it, being open about it, inviting us to do things making us feel included, really what it's all about.
Yeah, those are some great tips. And I am kind of wondering if sometimes people try to not talk about it because they just don't know how to approach the subject. And like you said, they're afraid they might cause some kind of chain reaction that might cause somebody to drink again. So yeah, those are great tips. And just goes to show that we need to be supportive. We need to include, we have to build that community. And I think in that community, we can support people so much better than by just kind of leaving everyone to their own devices. And then people ending up feeling isolated and just not part of the family or the group anymore. Those are wonderful things. Now, you work with clients who are on their sober journey, who are trying to get healthier and happier, more fulfilled lives. So what kind of programs and services do you offer? And just so listeners can get an idea of how they could work with you if they feel inspired by this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I run a free sober support group through Facebook. I'm a little older, let's say. So, like all the other things, I'm not a part of the media platforms. So, I'm still stuck in Facebook world, but it's a great platform to use for groups and live events and things like that. I offer a free support group. It's called Sober is Beautiful. It's where we help women change their relationship with alcohol, whatever that means for you. I started in January offering monthly challenges. This looks like, obviously for January, we did a dry January challenge. And within this challenge, you get a weekly support group. We read a book that's related to changing your relationship with alcohol. So it's kind of like a book club. I also do an inspirational interview for people to watch. I interview people who have been through this journey and are on the other side of alcohol, and we kind of highlight success stories. Obviously, there's daily postings, tips, resources, things like that people can access through these monthly challenges. So we're hoping to do that every single month in 2024. And then I offer individual coaching packages. And again, it's kind of wherever you are in your journey. I offer 60-day packages. And then I also offer a 90-day package. With those packages, we go step by step. The first week is education, and then we dig into your why. Then we talk about habits and we talk about stinking thinking. We get stuck in these negative self-talk spirals. And I really connect with you individually, one-on-one, to help you in your journey and your specific needs. And you have access to me through, it's called a mood journal. And you can type in your mood journal every day and let me know how you're doing. And so then I get like a little ding on my phone and I'm able to respond to you. So you actually have been with me every day, and then also access to the support group, which is again vital. And anybody doing the coaching package also has access to the monthly challenges. So they get the support group and the tips and all the things as well.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And thank you for all the work that you do to support people on their journeys to sobriety and to healing. I find this is just amazing. And we, of course, will be linking to all of Tiffany's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there for the links to her programs, the Facebook group, and the challenges if you want to work with her. And you can find out how you can do that there. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have appreciated this journey into healing from anxiety and substance abuse as much as I have. I've learned so much in this time that we have spent together, and I hope we passed on a lot of insights and value to our listeners as well. It was fantastic chatting with you today on the podcast, Tiffany. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You as well. Take care. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.